is how does one refractive surface affect another? This was a question suggested by Satya.
Okay.
And so we'll take this first.
How are we going to look at two simultaneously? So are they independent?
This is how I felt it, that they are independent.
So there are two simultaneous refractions happening, and you're trying to see what the relationship is with one affecting another.
Right, that's one aspect of it, and I feel like there's multiple refractive surfaces, multiple individuals. And individuals could be of any sort. They could be groups, they could be collectives of individuals, it could be something else. It could be just one individual, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But how do we know that there are multiple individuals?
If we are part of a collective and we sense ourselves to be an individual, then we assume that there are other individuals out there.
Yeah, so it's an assumption.
It's an assumption, yes.
So
is it an assumption, or do we have to go back to this aspect of identification that somebody else brought up that day?
I mean, if we start off with the premise that we don't know anything, then we only have approximations and assumptions.
No, we at least accept that we only know what we know.
Right. And therefore we model the other based on what we know of ourselves.
Yeah, so if we are there, then others are also there.
Kind of. I mean, yeah, I guess that's why we think there are aliens out there.
Yeah, right. So it's like, so you're accepting everyone's being, yeah, and not just your exclusive being.
It's an interesting paradox because we only know ourselves, but we think we know that there are others out there.
But do we know that there are others out there, or do we believe it?
We believe it. We assume, and based on our empirical observations, we create models of others out there which seem to be based very much on our own model.
Yeah, and which seem to be getting substantiated every day.
Seem to be, yeah.
But I think I don't know if we call that actually knowing or accepting the possibility.
Okay.
So what is this acceptance of possibility?
That will relate to any kind of assumption that it's relative. So if it's like inferring something, so you see your own world, you know that A, B, C makes up your world, and so you think that if the conditions for A, B, C can make up your world, a similar condition of A, B, C, and maybe D can make up somebody else's world.
Right.
So it's based on an experiential knowledge that this assumption is made. But it does not have to necessarily be true.
Correct, yeah. And I think one way of thinking about that is that I may not even know that A, B, C, D make my world up, but somebody else told me that A, B, C, D made it up. Another surface told me, therefore I accept that it is so. And I guess that's one way of how surfaces affect each other.
So what does that make stories? So if somebody tells us a story,
Yeah.
We believe it as to be as long as it relates to what we can identify.
Correct. Yeah.
And even if we don't identify with it, we are
Yeah.
willing to believe it. Is it because it's being told by somebody who is similar to us, or
Who we believe in. They may, even if somebody is similar to us, they may not believe in them.
So we don't find them believable, and that's why we don't believe, or we just think they're not credible.
Both are the
you
same thing.
have unbelievable stories also?
Yeah, which are credible. So we
Yes.
have, yeah. So I mean, believability and credibility is not the same thing, right?
Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
They're not. Yeah, they're
yeah. I
not the
think
same.
credible is the what yeah, we have to look at.
But believable is a very powerful thing. I believe credibility is much less than believability is, you know.
Yeah. So because I mean, that is a format, whereas credibility is a series of checkpoints.
Right.
Like
There
in
is
the
a process
sense,
to it, yeah.
yeah, if you have a good track record, you're a credible person in that sense.
So is credibility more factual? I mean, if you have facts and
It's more validated. And
Verifiable, perhaps.
yeah, so
okay.
more third party. It's an externally arrived at thing. You cannot do anything about it.
I mean, you could go and check. If you have the disposition of checking, you might go and check.
Check what?
Validate, basically, verify, if you wanted to do it yourself.
Yeah,
But
you
belief
can.
is something else. You don't take the steps, you don't take steps. Belief is just is. It's a leap.
Yeah, I mean, because we are talking of believability and not belief, actually. And
Right,
believable.
but believability is because somebody created a story that I believe in without stopping to verify it.
But is it a story that I believe in, or
Or I
it
bel
is a story that I find believable?
Well, if I find it believable, yes, there is a subtle difference, but there is a larger chance that I might believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that uh, if it is believable, it is basically we are saying that it is a construction which is following a certain set of rules. Whereas if we are saying that we believe in it, we are just saying that it's our fault.
Fault? What do you mean?
I mean, belief is can be called a fault in the sense that no matter how much the evidence is stacked against something, if you believe, you believe. It's not
But
a
what about
rational thing. It's not a
but
rational thing.
believability sounds like an act.
Yeah, it sounds like a construction.
Yeah. But so what? I mean, it's still with the intent of that removing the element of verification.
Of verification.
I mean, it's not, you're not worried about credibility. You're more concerned about believability, which means that,
Okay,
No,
so
yeah.
I was just thinking, if we relate this to the question, and if we, for instance, take a story, the same story, I mean, okay, the story is said by two different people,
Hmm.
and let's assume that to be the refraction that's happening,
Hmm.
and
right,
there is a variation in the two stories.
right,
It's essentially the similar kind of story, but there's a variation in the narration.
yeah,
So if you talk of believability or credibility or whatever, and you have these two stories being narrated,
right.
what happens?
It, so depending on the audience who perceive those two refractions, those two stories, I think it depends a lot on the audience and this presentation, how the refraction is happening. So it's an interaction between all these refractive surfaces.
Believability is.
Even credibility is.
No, but how, I mean, I was looking at believability in the sense of a construction, and in that sense, as a good thing, in the sense that it's a construction and it can be constructed again, right?
Hmm.
Whereas if it is something you believe in, we don't know what you're going to believe in next.
That is true, yeah. I mean, we can't say one is better than the other, one is good, one is bad. I don't know if I can say that.
No,
I
no,
mean, they're
no, no.
just.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's more useful in the manner of the question. I mean, in relation to the question we ended with yesterday, which was how do you optimize the refractive quality of a surface? So,
But
offering construction.
I don't know why believability cannot be constructed either. I mean, or you said that believability can be constructed.
Yeah, I said that it can be constructed.
Yeah, believability can be constructed, credibility also can be verified. So both have an element of
Yeah, but
construction.
credibility cannot be constructed so easily.
Yes, but credibility can be acted.
Yeah, I mean, without needing to be believable.
Yes, that
But
is
you can
true.
also get credibility through conviction, and that does not necessarily have to. I mean, and yeah, there
Yeah,
you go back to believing it. If there is
exactly.
conviction, you believe, and so it gains credibility.
Correct, correct, correct. So I'm not sure how many surfaces care about verification. I think persuasion and believability is of higher value, higher not good or bad, but it seems to be of a more of a
Functional. It's more
yeah,
functional.
Yeah.
yeah,
If
more optimization, yeah.
yeah, if you are considering that it happens in a way in a physical kind of process without needing the intervention of the individual. So because constructions can be altered in real
Yeah.
time, and I mean I understand that that's what acting is about.
Hmm.
Right. And this is an interesting acting where you keep the audience in mind because it's like a feedback system where the act can happen based on how the refraction is progressing.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think keeping track of both, at least seeming to keep track, because you don't really know
Yeah,
what the refraction in somebody else's head is happening. You don't
Yeah.
know that,
Yeah.
right.
but
But there are certain pointers that perhaps a good actor looks out for.
yeah. So I mean, I think that's what we were trying to get at in the sense when we were talking about how does I mean what is the external manifestation of refraction.
Right,
So when we were talking about whether if something is happening with a chair as a witness and if something is happening with a person as a witness,
right.
what's the difference? So can we say that because there is refraction happening in the person's experience,
Right.
there is some external manifestation of it that can be felt by someone outside that person.
Yes, but I want to say that that thing outside the person, the chair could actually be anthropomorphized and the person can actually be objectified So, but maybe the presence of an outside structure may make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the chair can listen, but how do we hear that?
It's inside. We imagine it listening.
Yeah, so yeah, we have to imagine hearing as well.
Hearing, and but the point is that there is a new variable going into the refraction because of the presence of the chair.
Okay. So you are saying that things have that external manifestation as well, and it's
It
not
could.
necessarily a person.
Yeah. I mean, I could have like a fire in, or something, something traumatic in front, which is an object, which might affect.
Yeah. And that's what you are pointing towards in this question. I mean, in a way of one of it of services affecting each other as as it being a chain and not a.
Like I didn't want to, I felt like narrowing it down to the individual was being a bit selfish. If I may even use a word strong enough as arrogant, I felt like there's much more to it than just the individual.
I mean, much more before it,
Before, yeah, a while or
before
after,
the
yeah,
individual. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah. Like it's much bigger than that. That's why
Right,
I thought that,
but also a disinterested person, kind of bored person,
yeah,
uh, would in that room with a chair, a person, and an actor would feel nothing in that room.
right, right. And
So
in that sense, it's individual.
yeah, I mean because it takes some kind of, I don't know, like learning or sensitivity or, and how do we characterize those things?
I didn't understand. What do you mean that something may not feel someone or something may not uh, be sensitive? Because if you take the example of what Satya gave, if there's a fire, now that would affect different things differently. It would affect people in a different way. It would
But
affect
not all
material in a
people in
different
the
way.
same way. Not all people in the
That's
same
true.
way.
But also if you take material, like even objects, it's going to affect it differently.
Correct. Yeah.
So I think there is a response, a reaction, if you don't want to say response.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't require a kind of
Not
sensitivity.
necessarily. I think it depends on what it is subjected to.
But then, yes, it does depend on what it's subjected to, but how it responds is dependent on itself, right?
Yeah, the properties of
Yeah,
the
right.
surface. Yeah,
And I think that's where the sensitivity perhaps comes into the picture.
yeah. Because we have to take into consideration things like weather and time
Yeah,
and climate,
yeah,
and these are equally,
yeah,
causes.
yeah. It's like a soup. We are in the soup. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
there.
So our next question is already, I think, being discussed in that sense. If refraction is a learned process,
Hmm.
because yeah, I mean, you're saying that we're already in the soup, but I mean, just like we can actually go back to language for an easy example. We
Yeah.
can say that the same book will not even be understood by someone who is not habituated to reading.
Right.
So, I mean, because acting is a slightly more difficult example because you can never know what the impact was, what the reaction was.
Right. 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 Whereas reading or something more passive, was that where you're going at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that you don't understand, if you don't understand the construct of language at all. I mean,
Right.
of a specific kind of usage of language.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, or are we thinking of text operating like a chant does, that produces a kind of quality of readership just by being being experienced. So it doesn't depend on being understood. So you can say a Sanskrit chant or some chant, and
Mm-hmm.
supposedly it has everything embedded in that chanting, and there is
Right.
no
Just by
further.
saying the chant, there
Yeah,
is a, yeah. Yeah. There's no processing required, but the effect already happens.
yeah.
I mean, I was
I don't
coming
know,
from a
it's debatable. Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead,
Go
Madhu.
ahead. I just said it's debatable because there's just because learning itself is I think a result of the refractive process.
Yeah.
So I think uh, things and people respond to its environment and surrounding, and um, the ones who are capable of a sensitivity, they adapt and change according to those, and that you can term as a learning. Like even plants tend
Yeah.
to change the way they grow or what they do according to what they're exposed to.
Right.
They slowly evolve and adapt. So it does not have to be a learned process. I think learning is a process as that comes
It's
through.
spontaneous.
But Malvika, from what I heard you say, I interpret that as learning. So it's getting some inputs and it's adapting to that. So to me, but maybe that's my interpretation of how
Yeah, so
learning.
refraction itself is not a learned process.
Okay, okay, okay,
The question is whether refraction is a learned process. I think it's not.
okay.
So, what would you say to? I mean, so would you say that a given experience will cause refraction in a similar way?
Similar to?
I mean, across all possible surfaces, individuals, whatever,
Hmm.
the refraction is similar.
No, why would it be?
But you're saying that it's not a learned process, so that means it should occur in the same way.
No, it does not imply that.
No, it
Because
doesn't imply that. Yeah, it's for each individual that refraction exists.
the surfaces are different and we just discussed the properties of each surface as
Yeah.
being
No, but
different.
how does it exist?
What?
So the original construction is there, and that is the refractive surface. But I want to add to it that I
Yeah.
believe there is also something meta in this. There are some layers that go on. The refractive surfaces become aware that refraction is happening and that the refraction happening is not optimal for that
Yes.
individual surface. Therefore, it puts on a new layer.
Sure,
Of,
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
that is certainly there. That is
No, but I don't agree that it's it's entirely about the surface. That's what I would like to believe, but the way culture operates, for example,
Hmm.
in a outside the frame context, and
Hmm.
it's it doesn't really uh, assume a common shared readership amongst the whole audience,
That's true.
and it expects a kind of learning to enjoy its benefits,
Right.
and and that and that expectation is rewarded. I mean,
Yeah, it
so
is.
yeah. So how would you connect these two ideas? I mean,
But that's where the layer comes in between. Culture is what provides the crust, the new crust. There's layers and layers forming.
forming where?
On top of the base refractive surface, there are other refractive surfaces that form.
Okay.
And culture is one of the catalysts that causes that crusting to happen.
So you mean it acts like a filter?
Culture, not like I mean, it could be a filter, but it is also a thing, an agent, which it's there.
Hmm.
It's like a soup, and then you have to sort of put on a shield over the individual, over the refractive surface to be able to function within that soup. So you become a submarine.
Now, how do you become a submarine? You're saying that the layers accumulate on the surface, and so it becomes a hybrid surface in that sense.
Yeah,
So, acha, you calling that a submarine?
yeah, kind of like
Okay,
the
okay.
exactly.
But then, how is that related to the believability idea in the sense of the construction, right? So, if if
I will allow the crust to form if I believe in what is hitting me.
yeah, but the layered crust, the layered surface,
Yeah.
can that be constructed, or no matter what you do, it's going to either be there or not, and that's a that's a process, and that can't be constructed.
The image I'm getting now is scar tissue. I mean, scar tissue forms. I mean, whether you want it or not, it'll be there. It's the debris of the conflict with the outside. But then, if I become aware of it and I'm able to form another surface outside it,
Uh, what do you say, Sam? Can you hear us, Sam? No, you can't. Yeah.
because I guess the question was, is refraction a learned process?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I was listening to what Malvika was saying, uh, and I accept that learning in itself is a process, but for us to make sense of, we are using language, which again is something that we have learned, right?
Yeah.
So in that context, if you're using words that we have learned over all these years of survival,
Hmm.
then uh, then refraction becomes a learned process, right? Like otherwise we won't be able to talk about these things. And I mean, adding to that, even the physics that we talk about, refraction is a physical phenomenon, and that again is something that we have learned. We never really, how to put it, we experienced it, but then we experience it because we see it through our physics glasses, right? So So in that context, I think refraction is a learned process. Yeah.
Sam, I want to go back to what you said about language. I mean, language
Okay.
is learned, yes, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean refraction is learned, right? I mean, we are using language as a tool to describe refraction or to
Yeah,
communicate.
but the idea of refraction lives within that description.
Correct.
Right.
I mean, the more we learn about something, the more we'll be able to appreciate it, right?
So are we talking
Or
about the
not.
idea of refraction or refraction itself? So I think that they're two different things.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. What is that?
I said, are we talking of the idea of refraction or refraction itself?
No, but they are not two different things in the sense we cannot distinguish between the idea of something and something because all
Yes,
we have is the idea of it. We don't really have
exactly.
it.
And it's sort of
No, if
feeding
you
it.
take experience, what I'm meaning by idea of it versus I'm pitching it against experience. I mean, if you go out and stand in the rain, you don't need to know what rain is to understand what is happening. You still get wet. Whether you call it rain or you call it anything else, it doesn't matter.
But how do you know that is not my delirium?
What?
I
Yeah.
mean, that the rain, how do you know that it's not the idea of the rain? It's not an idea.
Because your clothes will be wet.
Yeah, so they can
You
be
will
very
be
Imagine
drenched.
convincing.
that.
They can be very convincing deliriums.
Yeah.
No,
Delirium. See, this is the credibility. This is where like okay, so I can verify whether it is delirium or it's actual experience.
No, but
how?
I think the delirious person can't do it.
Yeah,
Also, you're
and
saying
so like Inception, the movie
yeah.
uh, really had this paradox in the sense, how do you know if you're sleeping or you're awake, or I mean, in the sense dreaming or you're awake,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure it's actually it's possible to distinguish.
I agree.
Distinguish between idea and the actual.
Uh, yeah,
Just
the idea of the thing and the thing itself.
Right, right, right. I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah.
It's the same thing, or it's different things.
No, it is the same thing. That's what you're saying, right? I accept that.
No, no, I'm saying that they are different things. That the
they
idea
are
of the
different
thing,
things, but we
You
only know
turned
the idea.
around, Prayas.
huh?
You started off by saying they are the same thing.
Yeah, that's when I left. Yeah.
No,
No,
and now he's saying they are the same.
no. I'm saying that uh, uh, the idea of something and the thing itself are different things in the sense that if the idea of refraction is all that we know of refraction, and we don't really know if outside the idea of refraction there is actually any refraction or not. So
So
they're
basically,
different things. Yeah.
so for the individual knows only the idea of the thing, but whereas outside the individual, there are two separate things.
We don't know if there's an outside.
Right, we don't know that. Yeah. So are there two separate things?
I mean, we don't, yeah, I mean, we can never know that.
So then we only know the idea.
Yeah, we have to make do with it. That's all we have.
I think this is useful as a tool with certain contexts. I am not going to. I don't feel comfortable agreeing with it universally or even essentially.
Mhm. I mean, it's actually counterproductive to actually even go down this road because
I yeah.
yeah, if you can't really say, then the idea is the thing for you. as far as you're concerned, then yeah, it's the same thing, right, Sam? You're right.
No, it is the same thing. Okay, so let me put it this way. So ideas are, Jason Silva, this guy, a futurist, he said, ideas are just as real as neurons are. The neurons that inhibit these ideas, the ideas become the neurons, and then they transmit from one brain to another. Essentially, like what we are doing right now is we are talking about an idea. So it migrates from brain to brain, and then it competes for the limited number of resources. Everyone has a short attention span, so it lives in each of our brain cells for a few seconds or milliseconds or whatever time it is. But then they have this spreading power, they are infectious. So essentially, this idea is what we experience at the end, even if it comes out as a product. So it is the same thing.
Yes, from a human being's perspective, yes. What about? Uh, I'm really fascinated that Satya brought up this aspect of fire today, because fire affects everything. So, what would you say to wood that is exposed to fire?
Why do you have to say anything to the wood? Maybe
No, you
the
don't have to
wood's
say
purpose is
anything
to be
to
wood,
the wood. The you see a reaction.
right?
What would
So
you say to the idea of wood? It's the same thing, so you can replace them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying wood itself is an idea.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
right,
yeah,
right.
you can talk of it as an idea, but if you're talking of refraction as being a process, uh, even if we just take the illustrative example of a prism and a ray of light passing through it,
Hmm.
yes, you can talk of it as an idea, but you can also experience it as a thing.
Right. An
So
idea. Yeah.
when
Okay.
you're if you're talking of it as an idea, then everything will fall under that aspect
Yeah.
of, I mean, the
Yes.
world is itself an idea,
Right. Right.
Everything
Right.
is
Right.
idea,
Yeah.
yeah.
because of our consciousness, everything becomes an idea. But
Right.
outside of this, now that is obviously accepted, and it is a given.
Hmm.
If we look at the actual process, the physicality of whatever is happening, that's what I'm interested in uh, seeing. There is, can you at that level say that it's a learned process?
Huh.
So you're talking about how the neurons respond. I mean, just to take that as an
Right.
example. So the physical, are you saying, is it a learned process at the level of
Exactly,
the physical?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to go back to a human example because
Right.
it's very the two can get mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
helps to talk about the surface, irrespective of subjectivity.
Yeah.
But there's a problem here, right? I mean, in case of a human example, there is learning happening across time.
Yes.
There is evolution happening. So the skin has evolved over a period of time, or like the plant has evolved.
Yeah.
That, if there is no sunlight, I become yellow. So, so the surface has adapted. There's a learning that has happened through evolution. But for a inanimate surface, so I mean, unfortunately, the surface does come into the picture.
Yeah.
There are active surfaces and static surfaces.
Yes. Yes.
So, are you saying the surface does come into picture, or the individual does come into picture?
The surface, okay.
Both.
I think, yeah, I mean, the surface is tied to the individual.
Okay, but might have nothing to do with it, and that, I mean, might not be
It may not,
specific to
yeah.
it.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you take a piece of skin which is detached, then yeah, it does change color. Like if you expose it to heat, like on top of a tabla or something, it has a different, because of its constitution. But if it is attached to an individual or an animal, it will have a different response.
Yeah.
And
So we
what I'm saying,
move to our third question for the day. If we accept that we cannot ever know anything, does that mean that refraction leads us to a state of unknowing?
I mean, we don't know anything. We have accepted that.
Yeah. So does refraction take us to, uh, is refraction the periodic refresh that takes us back to that point and prevents us from getting deluded that we do know something?
Okay, yeah. But again, it depends on who's taking the input of the refraction. I mean, it depends on the individual's processing of the refraction.
Yeah, right. Because that is not the common mode of like,
Operation.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's yeah,
agree.
right. So it obviously must be getting perverted somewhere.
Yeah. Like I keep coming back to this image of scar tissue. It's like
Hmm.
a surface which is like a kavach. It's like you built this armor,
Hmm.
and that sort of is like a hubris sometimes.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Like if
your defense mechanisms limit you.
right,
But for me, it also seems like a clue towards the optimization that was baffling us yesterday. So, in the sense that to optimize the refractive potential of a surface,
yeah,
you the one thing that we might be able to do is construct a more believable unknowing, like in the sense that construct a more believable reason to not know.
Yeah.
you have a feedback mechanism built into the system.
Yeah, of turning everything around constantly
Yeah.
to to constantly be left with the feeling that you don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense because even when you're talking of defense mechanism, I'm thinking of how our immune system works sometimes. And if you take the condition of allergies, the immune system is actually hyperactive.
Hmm.
So you have to either tell your immune system to sleep or train it to not recognize the things it knows or is believing to be harmful.
Right.
So I think that makes sense that you find that balance where it you don't sensitize yourself to an extent where you just believe everything or you take in everything
Yeah.
at its acute sharpest form.
You are
Right.
saying that a little bit of knowledge is essential in that sense.
A
Like
little lack of knowledge is essential.
no, but training your allergies is an act of knowing for
Yeah,
your allergy. I mean,
yeah,
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's like
from the immune system's point of view, lack of knowledge is essential then.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
now
true.
how is that?
No, it has to forget that, that.
Ah, acha, acha, okay. But it has to know that it has to forget that.
right. So you have
That's
to
also
take
there.
it again.
It has to be
Yeah, that's
conscious
what
that it has
becomes.
to
Yeah,
get away with its knowledge. It has to unlearn certain things.
yeah,
Acha,
yeah.
so it's like an erasure. It's not like a it's not like a memory to erase.
Yeah, it's conscious unlearning.
Hmm.
It's like a
Either that,
compensatory
yeah,
mechanism.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, even if I'm feeling now, if you look at the corporate systems where
Yeah.
you take the temperature of your company and you see, acha, something is going wrong, so I have to make a change,
Hmm.
you know. So some knowledge is needed, but then getting used to that process itself is not a good idea. You have to shake up that process also. You have to
True.
keep on shaking up every process.
So you
That's
can't
true.
so you can't ever make a textbook.
Yeah,
I
that's
do,
true,
yeah.
and I think that's essentially the problem with institutions. Also, they're not
Yeah,
shaken up enough
yeah,
periodically.
yeah. And it's always fun to go back to read textbooks from 20 years ago and you find it so hilarious, especially with organizations.
But then how do we grow?
That's how we grow.
By breaking yourself again and again.
Exactly. And like Malvika said earlier about you know a little, you have a little knowledge, you apply it, but shield yourself.
No, get hurt and then do it again.
Right. Get
Yeah.
hurt. Having a little knowledge is getting hurt. Like you have a controlled hurt. So you
Yeah.
don't like kill yourself, but
But that's really expecting a lot in terms of you know that that you have been hurt once and you want to be able to get hurt in the same way
Yeah,
again.
but in a different place.
yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't pick at the scar tissue. Let it heal.
Yeah,
See,
let
I
it
think
heal,
that's where,
no?
yeah, you're right, because I guess that's what is effective learning, that you see that you don't get hurt in the same place again.
Right.
But then how is this how is uh, this understanding of refraction as a state of unknowing, how do we keep it from becoming like a text actually, like a tenet, like a like a
Template.
learning, like yeah, like a learning. So how
Hmm.
do we keep it from becoming like a a syrupy thing that you can
Yeah.
just pass on?
We
Right. I
should
was
stop
seeing
talking about
inspirational posters.
Yeah.
it.
But sometimes I feel, and I hate to admit this, but like cliches.
So true.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, it's not the fault of the cliches. Actually, most of them are more than, I mean, they are very true. It's just
Yeah.
that, uh,
Overused.
yeah, it's just that when you, uh, I mean, if you just sell the spice separately packaged, then it's not as valuable as the cooked food.
Yeah.
True.
So it's, I mean, that's just it. So, it's if you constantly keep peddling the moral of the story, then
Yeah.
then you still want to read the story because you're not interested in the moral anymore.
Hmm.
So how do we do that? How do we keep it from becoming, because it's a very natural thing actually that you tend to repeat to yourself what you think are golden words.
Correct. Correct. But actually, what counts is the experience of that moral. The process to get to that moral is more important than the moral itself.
Right.
Yeah, and it can't be reverse fabricated in that sense, and also things get blunted just
Yeah.
by getting repeated.
True. And we associate with the moral itself rather than the difficulty of getting there without having actually gone through it.
Yeah, and we will assume that
Exactly.
it is blunted now, so it doesn't work in the same way, whereas it might if applied as the process and not the moral.
Hmm.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So we
And
need to have
therefore,
a tactic for preventing that from happening because we don't
But
want to.
what's wrong in that happening? That's again another process, right?
I mean, nothing wrong, but it's like the teaching a person to fish versus fish itself, giving a fish. I mean, it's kind of like I would probably learn more and have a stronger moral instilled within
But
me if I actually went through
I
the
mean,
mistake.
and it's interesting that you brought it up. I've been thinking about it. But what if everyone learns to fish, right? Then there is too much
Yeah.
competition. Right?
So then he's
Yeah.
not optimizing. The
Right.
fish is better.
Yeah, then you filter.
No, then another guy tries to create a net. The whole problem with capitalism is that.
Yes. I agree. I agree. But the key there was to actually share the fish.
Yeah, but like
Something to
human, that's
share.
not human nature, right?
I know, unfortunately.
No, but we are not concerned about everyone.
Okay,
I mean,
good.
we are just concerned about ourselves, right?
No, but we have to be concerned about everyone if we are concerned about ourselves, because if we overfish,
Mhm.
everyone's gonna overfish.
Yeah, so I mean, that is automatic. So concern for
No, so
yourself and
no, Prayas, when you say, what can we prevent, what can we do to prevent this particular thing from happening? I'm wondering why should we prevent it, and who are we
yeah, well,
preventing it
yeah.
from?
So I'll expand. I mean, so I'll tell you where
Mm,
I'm coming from. You know
mm,
that
mm.
that periodic act of seeding ground of essentially giving up your tension and of periodically landing up on a blunted point. I mean, which is not sharp in that sense,
Uh-huh.
is is not desirable. I mean, in a way, you'd like to evolve and constantly live with the sharpness, and actually don't know how.
Hmm. No, okay.
I think the that state of sharpness or bluntness is variable. It cannot be static.
Yeah, then
So
that itself becomes blunt.
I mean, and what's wrong with being blunt? Hammers are supposed to be blunt. They're not supposed to be sharp.
No, so periodic bluntness is fine. I mean, I'm not saying that we need to be knives, because even knives get blunt and you have to sharpen them. But
Exactly, after a while, yeah.
yeah, it's fine. But it's like, do you know that how to sharpen the bluntness again or not? I mean, I'm just talking
Ah,
about that.
And
So
that's where the inflicting the controlled wound comes back.
right, self-sabotage.
Yeah, self-sabotage.
so you are saying, Sam, that we don't need to worry about this prevention at all.
No, sir, no.
So it's okay.
It is okay. Everything's okay.
No, but then we just populate more and more cliches. That's it.
I
No, the
think give
problem is,
people, I
once
think,
we accept that everything is okay, let things be the way they are, there's no more arguments, there's no more discussions. So,
No, no, everything's okay, but it's still not restfully okay. It's not restful. I mean, you're still you still can't. You're okay, but you still can't rest. You're still restless.
yeah, that's true. That's the inherent nature.
Yeah, and
yeah, because some people are not okay with being okay. They want, good, great, those kind of things.
No, but
yeah,
that's
so
like
they're
that's like a
restless.
comparative levels. That's, I don't think when some people are not being okay,
Hmm.
that's not always in a competitive manner. It is also just the inherent nature of wanting to do something different, to change the
Yeah,
state.
but why does that person wants to do something different? Where is that coming from?
That's just an inherent nature.
maybe
It's
that's
an,
their way of unknowing.
Huh.
I mean, not everybody, I mean, you can say that it's okay
Mm-hmm.
at a foundation, but you might be restless. And I think that's like the Zen or whatever, like where you are,
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know.
if you actually say it from your foundation, then it's okay. But if you're saying it from a superficial level, then, then there's a problem there.
Right, like whether I'm doing it because I should be doing something,
Yeah.
or those words of should, like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we don't want to regress and talk about doership when we spoke at such length about uh, the impossibility of doership last time in perspective studies. And I'm not saying that we get into that mode of conscious action, and I mean that's not what this optimization idea is about, but it's more about focusing the lens. You do it once and you don't even know if you do it right. You just do something and you think that's focusing the lens.
Yeah, but I think that's what a lot of the creative processes do. I mean, when
Yeah,
somebody
but
is
creative processes are almost, mythical. Like,
no, no, no,
they're.
no. Wait, wait. Okay, let me not use the word creative. When Sam was saying that somebody is doing something different, or you're changing your state to not be okay. It's in some ways you are trying to push your own boundaries to see what else you can include in your frame.
Right, you're acknowledging that you don't know.
Mm.
Yeah,
You're acknowledging that I know this much, but I need to know more. I don't know that. So maybe I
yeah.
push there.
Or either that, or you're questioning what you know. That is it really
Exactly.
true?
Exactly. Yeah.
Can there
Yeah.
be something else? Am I missing out something?
So I'd
So,
like to conclude this season of the refractive surfaces
it's
study
done.
group. And the next one is this idea of surrogate surfaces, and and I mean, in the sense that so the surrogate surface is basically it is a construction and it is outside you in that sense, but like an actor does, like an actor constructs a surrogate surface, like an identity which is not the actor's own, but is still belongs to the actor. So I think I mean that's a starting point for me, because that feels like it will go beyond the objective and the subjective position both, because it's like a third thing.
I
I
see. So
like that.
you're not thinking of it as a layer on the existing individual, but actually another third party thing outside.
Yeah, because it's a construction, and like for example, the same role constructed by different actors will be similar and dissimilar at the same time.
Right, right, right.
So there is some surrogacy going on. There is
Right.
something
But
that is
can,
happening.
I'm sorry, I mean, would it also include something like the act an individual puts on themselves, like playing different personalities? Would that be considered as a surrogate surface?
Yeah, I mean, we will look at all I mean, degrees of it, and so I'm thinking of planning that in December. I mean, are any set of dates particularly not good?
For me personally, December 18th to 28th is not so good.
Okay, so across the new year might be good. Sam, how's that for you?
I'm okay with any time was.
Okay, so
Would
Malika,
early December be a
Should
possibility
be
at all?
fine for me.
early December?
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's
so maybe
that's good
before
for
10th.
me.
before or yeah, like until the 15th.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So we'll figure the dates.
Okay.
I guess we'll bounce some set of mails, but I'm thinking it for December, so
Yeah.
we will figure the exact dates. So yeah, thanks everyone for being part of this study group, and hope to
Thank
hear
you.
your voices next time.
Yeah,
All
thanks,
right.
Prayas, for
Thanks. Yeah.
organizing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Bye. Nice talking to you all.
Bye.
Yeah.